Shalom, shalom, and welcome to Bible study. It's Tuesday night. I want to get into a couple of things, kind of pick up where we were talking about some things on Sabbath, and get into a little bit more. The other night, on Sunday night, we crossed over into the month of Av. Time's accelerating faster and faster, it seems. But we crossed over into the month of Av, which I'm sure we're going to be touching on more on Sabbath. The significance of the month of Av and stuff like that. But there's been a heightenedness in the times that we're living in, and things have really started escalating. There's been an intensity that has ramped up just over the weekend. Obviously, we're still waiting on the strike from Iran, which Iran's latest thing is this is part of their punishment of Israel, is the waiting game. They're forcing all of Israel to be on high alert, everybody to be at their posts, and then they're just hitting the pause button and just kind of waiting. Personally, I wouldn't be surprised if they waited until next Monday, the 9th of Av, Tishba Av, but that remains to be seen. We are in an intense spiritual time as well. It's not just physical. Oftentimes what we're seeing in the natural is a representation of what's going on in the spirit. You know, the two levels parallel themselves. It's like in Jerusalem. You have the Jerusalem above and you have the Jerusalem below. And so we have a spiritual realm that's paralleling the natural realm. When we went to Washington, D.C., we could really sense the spiritual battle that was taking place over Washington, D.C. And usually we've been able to sense that, but it's even more intensified this time than it has been before. And so when we're talking about the times we're living in and the intensifying of it and how everything is ramping up, we also have to step up our game to keep up with the times. You know, like Lynn Hammond was saying in the prayer conference, that we got to be able to keep up with the season that we're in. We got to be able to maneuver in the season. You can't let the things that are going on cause you to be paralyzed. And we're not going to get into a whole lesson on fear, but we've talked about that many times in here, how the events that are occurring can cause a level of fear to start to try to creep in. And we know that fear contaminates our faith and it renders it useless. These times are not times for us to draw back. It's times for us to press forward and to increase in our level of faith. But going alongside faith is so many ingredients. Faith is a recipe, but you got to have all the ingredients to have your faith be effective. You can say you have great faith, but if all the ingredients are not put together, then it's not going to be effective faith. So why don't we turn over to 2 Peter chapter 1 real quick to start. 2 Peter chapter 1. And we'll start at verse 2. May grace and peace, which is perfect well-being, all necessary good, all spiritual prosperity, and freedom from fears and agitating passions and moral conflicts be multiplied to you in the full, personal, precise, and correct knowledge of God and of Yeshua our Lord. For his divine power has bestowed upon us all things that are requisite and suited to life and godliness, through the full personal knowledge of him who called us by and to his own glory and excellence. So it's interesting, the words there. He's called us to his glory. And a lot of people talk about the exceeding great glory that's coming, and that's all true. But there's a second part to that: his glory and excellence. And excellence is something that we've touched on here, but it's something that is so necessary in these days. Continuing on to verse 4, by means of these he has bestowed on us his precious and exceedingly great promises, so that by them you may escape by flight from the moral decay, the rottenness and corruption that is in the world because of covetousness, and become sharers of the divine nature. For this very reason, adding your diligence to the divine promises. Employ every effort in exercising your faith to develop virtue, excellence, resolution, Christian energy, and in exercising virtue, develop knowledge, intelligence. And in exercising knowledge, develop self-control. And in exercising self-control, develop steadfastness, patience, endurance. And in exercising steadfastness, develop godliness. And in exercising godliness, develop brotherly affection. And in exercising brotherly affection, develop Christian love. For as these qualities are yours and increasingly abound in you, they will keep you from being idle or unfruitful until the full personal knowledge of our Lord Yeshua. So we're going to stop there for a moment. Another translation kind of condenses it. The Amplified gives the amplified version of it, extends out the translations. But another translation says, now for this very reason also, applying all diligence, in your faith supply moral excellence, and in your moral excellence knowledge, in your knowledge self-control, your self-control perseverance, and in your perseverance godliness, and in your godliness brotherly kindness, and your brotherly kindness love. So he's setting a standard here that he's saying that you're supposed to apply your diligence to becoming more excellent. Excellence should be the standard of every believer. Colossians is a familiar book to us. Hold on, let me pull it up here. Colossians chapter 3, verse 23, familiar verse to us. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for men. And the tendency is especially as things start getting more difficult, there can be a tendency to become lax in our excellence. There can be a tendency to kind of drift to the lowest common denominator and say, well, I'm doing better than those in the world, so I must be good. But there's this poem, if you would call it, that says, good, better, best, never let it rest until your good is better and your better best. So you should always be striving to be the best. Now that's not to lord it over someone else and like, I'm the best at this and I'm so much better than you. No, it's for your own benefit and for your own spiritual growth. When you're striving to become better at something, there's always going to be someone else further ahead of you. You know, that's setting that standard for you to follow. You know, right now the Olympics is going on, and there's so many different sports that are going on in that. But I think of like the pole vaulting or the high jump. You know, they didn't start out with that amazing height that they're able to vault over. You know, they had to start out at a low height and learn how to use their pole correctly and learn how to thrust themselves properly and angle themselves so that they go over the pole. But they didn't stop there, because right after, with that sport, right after you clear that height, they raise the bar again on you. It's like, yay, you made it, you got over that bar, good. Now we're going to raise it and see if you can make it over the next high bar. And interesting, because the pole vaulting and the high jump are really the only event I can think of where the winners end in failure. Think of it. Like when do you know that they've reached the utmost? When they can't make it over that bar. All right? So right now the world high jump record is 8 feet 1.5 inch. 8 feet and a half inch. That's the greatest height anyone has ever cleared with their body. Now that's pretty high to jump if you think of it. Like I'm not going to try to demonstrate right now, but I can't jump nearly that high. But you see it even in horse jumping. There's I don't remember what it's called. I think it's called the puissance. It's the tallest jump that has ever been jumped by any horse, and it's massively tall. It's higher than the horse's head. You wonder how this huge 2-ton animal can make it over this thing. And there's been very few that have, and those ones who have been setting the record. So they've basically set the bar. Now, you know, that one person that set the bar at 8 feet and a half inch for the high jump, they did it once in 1993 and nobody's done it again since. But because one person has done it, they set the standard to which all other jumps are measured. So when we look at, standards in life, success is not going to lower its standard to us. We have to raise our standard to the standard of success. Success is not going to lower its standard to meet our expectations. We have to raise our expectations to meet that standard. So in our life, what is our standard supposed to be? It's supposed to be Yeshua himself. Okay? He set the bar pretty high. And he set the bar even higher, just read through the Gospels and see how high he set the bar for those who were living at the same time as him. In the Old Testament, the requirement was you had to sacrifice a lamb, or you had to sacrifice an ox, or whatever your sacrifice was, but it couldn't just be any old animal. You couldn't just say, oh, well, this is the lamb that was in the back of the flock, and I guess this one will do. We know what happened to Cain when he didn't give of his best, okay? But when they were sacrificing, it had to be something that was of value. It had to be something that was worth something. If it didn't cost them anything, it wasn't a sacrifice, and it wasn't excellence. So they wouldn't take their sick or weakly or deformed lambs and offer it as a sacrifice at the temple. That would be a slap in the face of God, who has given them everything, and then they're going to offer him this little measly offering? No. God required a perfect animal without spot or blemish. So you come into the New Testament, and a lot of Christians, I think that Yeshua came and did away with all that, so you don't have to give at all. You don't have to give your best to God. He'll take whatever. He'll take you as you are. Come as you are. Yeah, come as you are, but you're not supposed to stay as you are. Too many times the church has become a babysitting forum to keep babies on milk. We're just you come as you are, and we're just gonna love you as you are, but never teach you how to grow up. You're not really loving your baby if you keep them on milk and never teach them to grow up and eat solid food and walk and do things on their own. That's not helping the child to grow up as they should. So we're supposed to be always striving to get to another level. When we give our best to him, when we honor him in every aspect of our lives, that's when our lives are truly bringing him glory. That's when we can say that we're giving him what he deserves. And even the best we can give him is so minor in comparison to everything he's done for us. But, breaking it down a little bit more, when you're raising the bar, to raise the bar, it means to make something better. To raising standards and expectations, especially by creating something better than previously known or experienced. So Yeshua raising the bar, he was the one who had said that, you've heard it said, but I say. And notice what he said was not making the bar lower. It was not making it easier for you to follow. It's now I'm bringing it to the level of your heart and your inner attitude. See, that was his conflict with the Pharisees. It was not what they were doing. It was what they weren't doing. It was a matter of you're doing just the letter of the law to see how you can get by with it, but your heart's not in it. And he wants your heart. He wants your heart to be in it. What kind of, how you are in your life will be a reflection on him to the world. What kind of worker are you? Do you work just as hard when the boss isn't around as when he's looking over your shoulder? Are you the type of person that puts an excellent spirit into your work so that they know you're someone who belongs to the Lord? Or is it, unfortunately, what you see a lot of times in the world is people who are the most vocal about I'm a Christian, their lives are such that they're actually turning people off to Christianity. Whether it be their attitudes, whether it be their work ethic, whether it be just their general humglum attitude of life, they're down in the dumps all the time. That's not a good reflection on the Lord. It's better for you to not be saying so publicly, I am a Christian, if your life is going to be displaying that to them. If you're going to be public about your profession, then you better be public about your action. And actions speak louder than words. But the kind of worker that you are is a reflection on Yeshua. If you're sloppy in your life, then you're giving a sloppy impression of him. And this is all about raising the standard, raising our own lives to another level. Romans 8:32 in the Message says, if God didn't hesitate to put everything on the line for us, embracing our condition and exposing himself to the worst by sending his own son, is there anything else he wouldn't gladly and freely do for us? That's his attitude. You know, Yeshua said that the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister. As the Son of God, he came to serve others. And that was the display of excellence that he was trying to get his followers to have. You know, we see the frustration he had when here they are all there bickering about being, oh, am I going to sit on your right hand and on your left in the kingdom? And he's like, you're missing the whole point. You're missing the heart of what I'm trying to communicate to you. And especially because he only had 3 years to do it. That's not a whole lot of time to impart everything that you are to someone. 2 Corinthians 13:11 says, aim for perfection. Now, that goes completely contrary to what your natural flesh wants to say. Well, nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. What is that? That's an excuse for you to fall below the line. I can't reach that standard because I'm not perfect. Well, you're supposed to be aiming for perfection. And if you're aiming for perfection, you're going to come a lot closer to it than if you're just allowing yourself to drift to the lowest common denominator. Proverbs 16 verse 3 says, commit to the Lord whatever you do, and your plans will succeed. See that word commit? That speaks of a standard of excellence. You're not half in and half out and here one day and gone the next. You're committed. You're sticking with it. No matter what, you're showing up. There's one person that said, mediocrity is excellence in the mind of the mediocre. So if you're a mediocre person, you think you're walking in excellence. You know, what is it that they say, like 70% of people think that they're above average? You know, it's like, you know, people like to think they're somewhere they're not. And this is where these times that we're living in, you got to be able to take an accurate calculation of where you're at. Otherwise, something's going to hit you in the face and wake you up to the fact that you're not there. Matthew 5:20, Yeshua says, for I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. Now that's a pretty strong statement. Can you imagine the people who were hearing it? I mean, the Pharisees of the day were the standards. Like, they're the ones who are the ultimate law keepers and the, you know, making sure that everybody else kept the law too. But, you know, they held the record, but Yeshua was saying their record is not sufficient. He was raising the bar above what they were doing. And then he goes on to say, you know, in previous verses, in 17 and 18, he said, do not think that I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. I've not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. I tell you the truth, until heaven and earth pass away, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Anyone who breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever preaches and teaches, practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Now that's not even just necessarily teaching with your words. It's by your actions. There's always going to be someone watching you, how you live your life. And either your light is going to so shine before men that they see your moral excellence and give glory to God, or your life is going to be just like theirs and they're going to say, what's the point of being a Christian? They're no different than I am. That's not where we want to be. That's where we cannot be in these end times. We got a world out there that is lost. We got a world out there that needs Yeshua. And we might be the only Yeshua they encounter. That's a serious call. We got to take it more seriously. So a lot of people might think that they're holding to a standard of excellence, but Yeshua might be saying you gotta step it up a bit. You know, a believer may refuse to lie because lying is wrong. but then he'll intentionally mislead by not giving direct answers. And is that the standard? And then, but he says, well, no, I never lied. Technically. But again, isn't that no different than what the teachers of the law and the Pharisees did? Tithing with their mint and dill and cumin, but they're neglecting the weightier matters of the law. Their heart wasn't in it. A Christian single might make a commitment to remain a virgin until they're married, but then go on to do every manner of stuff they can do right up to the edge of technical virginity. Is that the heart of what Yeshua wants from us? I think not. We may give up a sin, or bad habit when we're fasting. Remember we had that fast that we were doing along with Eagle Mountain Church. They're going to be doing another one, I think, coming in September. He's talking about ramping it up again, because the times are serious enough that we've got to keep laying aside the weights that keep trying to entangle us. You can lay it aside once, it's going to try to entangle you again at some point. But we might give that up when we're fasting, but first get as much of it as you can before you fast. I'm giving up ice cream while I'm fasting, but I'm going to go and eat a quart of it before I go and fast. No, is that the heart of it? You're kind of missing the point. You might want to practice good stewardship and being honoring God with the tithe. So you'll tithe to the penny and not a penny more. Or maybe, I give God $10 a week. But you're missing the whole point of generous giving out of cheerful heart. Again, where's your heart at? Where's your heart at with Him? If your attitude toward your friends, or toward your coworkers, toward your family, let's bring it down to that level, because often family gets to see the side of us that no one else gets to see. If your attitude toward people in your life is going to be mean and nasty, then the Bible that you carry around in your hand is futile. You can't go out there and project out in the world that you're this great Christian, but in your family you're living something else different. That's being two-sided. That's being a hypocrite. What about shifting faults when you know you're guilty? You're the one who did something, you were caught, but you start pointing the blame at everyone else. Is that a Yeshua-like attitude? No. And it's something that we all got to address inside of ourselves. Not thinking of anyone else. Again, this isn't, I know somebody who needs to hear this. I know somebody who needs to address that in their life. No, this is about us. What do we need to address before the Lord? And we all know, Holy Spirit is the great hound of heaven. He comes after us and He convicts us of the things that we know that we're doing wrong. Why? So that we can get it right. So that we can step up to the standard that He's set for us. So all those things are the attitudes of a Pharisee. We can't blame the Pharisees if we're walking in similar attitudes. We need to not be more interested in just keeping the technical rules than we are in loving Yahweh. And how do we get closer to loving Him? How do we become more committed in our walk? How do we raise the standard of excellence where we would never even go near a line of sin? How do we draw it out, not out of I gotta keep this commandment, but how do I become so close to you that that's never even a thought in my mind? That should be the standard. The other question is, do we walk in true integrity? When you promise something, do you swear to your own hurt and not change? Do we really know what that means, to walk in that kind of integrity? The Amish, if you have an Amish man build a house for you, when he shakes your hand and agrees on the price of that house, that's the price you'll pay for the house. If it costs him $20,000 more than what he shook, he's still going to make you pay the original price. He'll take the hit for it, because his word is his bond. Is your word your bond? No matter what, are you going to stick with what you said? Or is the enemy going to be able to come up and distract you from it? When you say you're going to do something, do you actually follow through with it? Or do others see you as someone who doesn't keep your word? Now, it's something that it's easy for us to say, oh yeah, I'm a person of excellence, I'm a person of integrity, but what would others say? You know, integrity goes beyond just lying, too. You know, integrity, if you look up the dictionary word for integrity, the definition almost always has something that includes the word wholeness. It has an idea of wholeness. Think of structural integrity in a building. It doesn't mean that the building's honest. I mean, the building is honest that it's standing, but structural integrity means that it can withstand things, and it's going to still be standing no matter what comes up against it. It's not weak. It's not, you look at it and you might tap on the wall and all of a sudden it caves in because it's rotted out. That has no structural integrity. Well, if your life is a life of integrity, then no matter what rot the enemy tries to bring, it's not going to weaken your foundation because you are built on the solid rock. You're rot resistant. You're not going to be, you know, like it said in the first verse that we read in Peter about escaping the rottenness and the corruption of the world. Integrity is the way that you do that, holding on to the integrity. The word integrity itself has the idea of what is wholehearted, honest, whole, complete, and true. It's the opposite of unfaithful. It's the opposite of unreliable. It's the opposite of people who say one thing and do the other. So integrity is being the same underneath as you are on the surface. And some people are really good at putting on a facade and showing one face. But underneath, they're thinking a lot of other things, right? So another thing with integrity is, do you have integrity not to meddle in things that aren't your business? Do you have integrity to not eavesdrop on conversations that aren't yours? Do you have integrity to not touch other people's things, even if they leave them lying around? You pick it up, and it's not yours to touch. That's not having integrity. Or if their computer is pulled up, or you happen to be somewhere and somebody's computer is pulled up, do you look to see what they have pulled up or on their phone? Do you look to see what they have, or do you respect that that's their privacy? It was not meant for your eyes to look at, and you have the integrity to respect the privacy and not look at it. See, it's bringing the bar up to another level, and it's really challenging ourselves to push ourselves to that level. Like, yeah, no, I'm better than the ones in the world. I'm better than those around me. I'm not doing certain things. Fine. Then where can we step up even higher? Where can we raise the bar even higher? Deuteronomy 23:23 says, "You shall be careful to perform what goes out from your lips, just as you have voluntarily vowed to the Lord your God what you have promised." It makes you a lot more careful on what you say, what you promise that you're going to do. If you know that you know that you know that what you say you're going to do, you're going to have to do, it will make you a lot more cautious about what you commit to. You know, I think it's Brother Keith that talks about how if somebody says, we should get together, and you say, yes, yeah, we really should get together, but you have no intention of getting together with them, that's a level of not having integrity. You should be able to be honest enough to say, you know, that sounds nice, but in reality, that's probably not going to be the case. For whatever reason, you don't even have to give a person a reason for everything. You just got to give them your answer and let your yes be yes and let your no be no. You say you're going to do something, then do it. If you say you're not going to do something, then don't do it. It's about integrity. Psalm 78:72 says, "And David shepherded them with integrity of heart." I like that verse because it's when we're leading others or when we're working, are we working with integrity of heart? Not just our surface actions, but where's our heart at? And with skillful hands, he led them. 1 Chronicles 29:17 this is David's words. He said, "I know, my God, that you test the heart and are pleased with integrity." So integrity is another level of raising the bar higher. Where can we be walking in more integrity in our lives? Abraham Lincoln said once that for a man to train up a child in the way he or she should go, he must walk that way himself. You know, and for those who have children now, your life is setting the standard for your children to follow. If you start hearing things come out of their mouth that you recognize in yourself, you better deal with it in yourself before you deal with it in your children. If you don't have children, now is the perfect time to get those things cleaned up before you have children, and recognize, how do I want my children to be? Would I want my child to be imitating me in this situation? Would I want my child to be like I am? And if the answer is no, be honest. If the answer is no, then change. Change what you need to change to be the person that you want others to follow. 1 Timothy 4:12 says, let no one look down on your youthfulness, but rather in speech, conduct, love, faith, and purity, show yourself an example to those who believe. So your life should be able to be an example. Speech and conduct, and love and faith and in purity. That's the wholeness of your being. You should be able to walk before people and have the confidence that whatever someone is seeing on me, they're getting the real me, but they're going to be able to follow me, and I'm going to be comfortable that they follow me because I'm imitating him. You know, like Paul said, imitate me as I imitate Yeshua. There's always going to be someone looking up to you, but you want them to follow you for the right reasons. Another thing is, are you a good friend? Are you someone that others would want to be friends with, or are you someone that they feel like they would need to be cautious around? You know, how are you in your current relationships? How can you raise the standard in your current relationships? How's your love walk going? These are all questions that we got to ask ourselves. Are you still going around the same tree with the same people and the same issues, the same things that irritated you 10 years ago? Or are we stepping up the bar another level and saying the time has passed for being a child? We can't be having things distract us in these times that have always distracted us before. We can't be having the same issues going on that went on 10 years ago, where it's time for us to move beyond that. The bar's been set way higher than that now. People will judge our God by the way we act toward others. If we're treating others in such a way, they're going to see that as, well, your God must treat people that way. Would we feel comfortable with other people thinking that we're a representation of our God by how we treat others? Be the kind of person you would want to be friends with. Think about it. If you think of the person that you would absolutely want to be friends with, then be that person. Because the other person also has a thought of what kind of person they would want to be friends with, right? So we got to be the kind of person we would want to be friends with. If we want God's best in our life, we have to raise the bar of excellence ourselves. We have to give it our best. You know, for those of us who are believing for a spouse, if we can all say that we have high standards. We have high standards. We should have high standards for the man or the woman that we're believing for. But we have to be at that standard that our spouse is believing for. Because if we're believing for a person of standards, then they should be also believing for a person of standards. And if we set all of our faith on believing for that person of standards, but we're not working on ourselves, then we're not going to be at the standard that they're believing for. So we got to be the kind of person, the kind of spouse that they're believing for. It's all about changing our life, raising our bar to a higher level, not for other people to meet that expectation, but for us to live up to that expectation that Yahweh has of us. Focus on changing you, not on changing others. Not on how other people need to change, not on what they need to. Raising the bar is a challenge to you. It's not a challenge that you're putting forward to others. There's a phrase that I heard. It said, it's not what we eat, but what we digest that makes us strong. It's not what we gain, but what we save that makes us rich. It's not what we read, but what we remember that makes us learned. And not what we profess, but what we practice that makes us Christians. You know, you can chew the food and then spit it out, and you never gained anything from it. So technically you ate it, but you didn't partake in it, and it didn't nourish your body. You can say all you want, you're a Christian, but if you're not practicing it in your life, Selah. So, you know, a person I think who had like high standards in his life was Joseph in the Bible. You know, Joseph's standard of excellence was up here. Nothing could persuade him to move down off his standard of excellence. And I think if we look at the life of Joseph, we should ask ourselves, how are we unlike Joseph? How easy would it be for us to give up and say okay to something we know is wrong? How easy would it be for the enemy to bring someone or something to cause us to be pressured into giving in to something we know is wrong? We gotta raise our standard of excellence in that we're not easily swayed by the things, not easily swayed by the temptations. Oftentimes we judge ourselves based on the things we do, not the things we haven't done. It's like, yeah, well, I didn't do what Holy Spirit told me to do, but I did this and this and this, and those were good things. Yeah, but it wasn't what He told you to do. It's like if you gave your child an order, go pick up your room, and you come in and you say the room wasn't picked up, but I cleaned the bathroom and I folded the laundry, but you didn't do what I asked you to do. Where's the standard of holding ourselves to doing what He's told us to do? Doing what He's told us to do. Or how many people judge ourselves by our intentions rather than our actions? Dad used to talk about that. We judge ourselves by our intentions and others by their actions, when we should actually flip that, give others the benefit of the doubt, assume that they had good intentions, and judge ourselves by our actions. My heart was in the right place. My heart was in the right place is an excuse for living at a lower standard. Raise the bar. Jump higher. James 4:17 says, anyone who knows the good he ought to do and doesn't do it sins. That's pretty clear right there. That brings it down to a level of, it's not just, well, what does this scripture actually mean by this? Is this what are all the theological definitions of sin? Is this one that leads unto death? And no, you know what? Get out of the theological. If you know something good to do and you don't do it, that's sin to you. Plain and simple. There are people, like I said before, that are observing you. If you're negligent in some area of your life, negligence will kill integrity. If you're negligent, what area of your life have you been neglecting? You got to decide right here and now that you're not going to neglect it anymore. That could be your physical body. It could be your health. It could be not getting enough sleep. It could be any level of thing. If you're neglecting an area of your life, then you're not living in excellence in that area, and it will start to affect all the other areas. Terry Savelle Foy has been talking about like pressing towards your dreams and stuff like that, and she talks about how all these things are connected. You want to be successful, make your bed in the morning. It breaks it down to these things that are so unbelievably simple that it seems like that's not going to affect anything. What does making my bed in the morning have to do with anything? But it really does. It starts setting a standard of excellence inside of you. Or wash the dishes right after you're done eating. Things like that. It will start to create a standard of excellence in you that will raise you up to a higher level. Not only that, it makes you feel better. You don't even know why. It might not be a pleasant task at first, but it will make you feel better in the end, because you feel like I've accomplished something. I've completed something. I've taken care of it. You naturally feel good when things are put in order. Why is that? Because our God is a God of order. He's not a God of chaos. So if our lives are in chaos, we're not in alignment with Him. The more things we're putting in order in our lives, the closer it makes us to Him. It's a taste of His shalom in your life. Because what is shalom? Nothing missing, nothing broken, everything in order in your life. And again, disease is just a sign that something's out of order. There's something that's not in shalom in your life. A lot of times it reflects on attitudes. A lot of times it's because of natural circumstances, whatever it might be. If you address the root cause of it, if you put that in order, then that oftentimes will correct itself, and everything will start to line up. So we got to raise the bar and decide that we're not going to neglect these things in our lives anymore. Like I said, there's people that are observing us and taking note of the light that is shining in our life or the lack thereof. We want to be that light that shines before men. we might not be aware of it, but there is a person or a group of people that are witnessing the way we live, how we act, what we do, and what kind of excellence and attitude we demonstrate in our lives. And we are making an impact on their lives, for the positive or the negative. We want it to be a positive. We want to leave a fragrance of Yahweh in their lives, not a stench of garbage that they feel like they need to clean out, that they don't want to be around you because you're adding more to their already chaotic life. No, bring shalom, bring the fragrance of Yahweh into every situation you go into. We have the opportunity to become a godly influence on someone else who needs our example. It's not just about us raising the standard so we're living a better life. It's raising the standard in our life so that other people look at it and say, well, if they can do it, I can do it too. I want to aim to be like that. You know, the people who are just going out and puddle jumping are not the ones that people are trying to imitate in the Olympics. They don't pay attention to the little children jumping over the puddles. They don't even pay attention to your average track and field people who are doing their jumps and whatever. No, they're paying attention to the people who have hit that standard, who've made the standard. They watch the videos over and over again. What did they do? How was their body positioned? How did they jump? How did they reach that standard? And then they start trying to imitate. You know, the whole thing of, even with me riding, I watch my horse instructor ride. And I love it when my horse instructor is riding, because then I can see how she's doing it. You know, she can teach me. She can give me the words, and you guys sit this way and make sure you're sitting up. But when she gets up there and demonstrates it, it clicks. You know, a lot of us are visual learners. It's like, you walk me through something, I'll remember it a lot more than if you just write down the checklist for me. I got to be able to picture it. And so when she gets up there and she rides like that, then it's like, oh, I can do that. And then I can get up there and imitate it. I was watching her give a lesson the other day to another student, and it was very similar. And I saw the change in this student, because she was getting all caught up in, she's telling me to do this, and her hands are like all over the place, and she's muttering to herself, and why won't he listen to me? Why won't he listen to me? And my instructor's like, okay, stop, just stop. Stop fussing with him. Don't mess with his mouth. Just stop and look at me. She wasn't even on a horse at the time, but she said, I want you to just put your hands here. Don't focus on anything else. Just put your hands here and leave them there for an entire circle around the ring. And so she's like, okay, all right. And amazingly, you know, as she started riding around with her hands like that, everything else started coming into alignment with the horse. He wasn't fussing with her anymore. Her arms weren't going all over the place like this. He wasn't going crooked and doing all this stuff. He started walking. And she went, oh, just because she was watching how she imitated. She was imitating how she displayed it. That's what it's like with Yeshua. He walked as a man on this earth so that we can look at how did he do that and walk like he walked. He's set examples like that before us in leaders that we follow, like that we're supposed to imitate. How did they do it? How did they walk a successful life? If you see somebody successful at something that you're not so successful at, watch what they do and imitate them. You know, sometimes that's the best way to get successful and raise the standard in our own life. Pick somebody who's out there ahead of you, who has the standards that you want, then imitate them. And that will raise our own standards. So as we walk in obedience, as we lean on Holy Spirit, as we're obedient to Him, then He'll start to use us to demonstrate His word in action to someone else who needs to see it. You know, 1 Peter 4:3 says, you have already wasted enough time living like those outsiders in the society around you. And that's so true. Another translation says, you've spent enough time in the past doing what unbelievers like to do. You know, and you might say, well, you know, I didn't do any of that stuff. But just go and look at everything that it says in the Word that unbelievers do, the gossip. There's a lengthy list that I think that at some point, if you look at it, you'll find that, yeah, I think I used to do that myself. If you know, what does it say in 1 Corinthians 13 about love being the standard? You know, we're not touchy, fretful, or resentful. Billy Brim's story of taping that up on her cabinet and setting that as her standard. She had to fight that battle in her life to be at the position where she's at now, in leading and reaching out to the nations. Okay? The biggest battles in your life that are holding you back from the best you can possibly be are often fought right in the doors of your own home. If we could win the battlefield in our own home, actually bring the circle even tighter in our own mind, if we can win the battlefield of our own mind, then we're going to be a lot further along in the success that we want to reach in life. In closing, I had found an article by our Greek scholar, Rick Renner. This wouldn't be Bible study if we didn't bring up something from Rick Renner. And he's talking about the standard that's expected of us. 1 Timothy 3:1 is his scripture. This is a true saying: if a man desires the office of a bishop or an overseer, he desires a good work. Rick says, one time many years ago, Denise and I were driving down the street discussing our concern for certain church members who reflected no desire for excellence in the way that they lived. As we discussed our desire to see the people in our church display a greater desire for excellence in their lives, we happened to look out the car window. There we saw one of our church members, an older woman, walking down the sidewalk. The elderly lady was extremely poor and had suffered miserable hardships in her life, yet every time we saw her, she always wore a beautiful smile on her face. My wife and I had commented to each other on many occasions about this woman's never-give-up attitude. Like millions of other people living in the wreckage of the former Soviet Union, this woman had lost her money, her job, and even her national identity when the Soviet Union collapsed. As a pensioner, she existed on a salary so low that we didn't even know how she survived from day to day. Her monthly pension was barely enough to buy bread and milk. This sad situation has happened to many people in the former Soviet Union. It's heartbreaking to see so many who live in despair, having lost all hope and sense of purpose in life. But on this particular day, the elderly lady's hair was beautifully combed and her face was prepared for the day. She had put on her best dress jacket and was holding her head high as she walked down the street. She looked as if she was a queen. Then we noticed that the woman wobbled as she walked. Looking at her feet, we saw that her shoes were almost completely worn out and were surely causing her great pain as she slowly strolled along. When I saw how this little old woman hobbled along in old, worn-out shoes with her head held so high, it both blessed and saddened me. I felt sorry that her financial situation was so bleak that she had to walk in such a decrepit pair of shoes. But her spirit and her mental attitude were so strong that she refused to let life get her down, and that blessed me. I thought of all the people we knew who faced much less challenging situations, yet who sat around griping and complaining about everything. Because they didn't have the same desire this woman had to keep pressing toward excellence, regardless of the obstacles, they were much more prone to give up and quit. But this little woman put on the best she had in an effort to look as excellent as possible in the midst of her very difficult circumstances. It is sadly true that many believers live low-level lives simply because they have no ambition, passion, or desire to do anything to improve themselves. Their complacent attitude prevents them from ever doing anything better with their lives. Considering the fact that the Spirit of God lives in believers and wants to take them higher, it's hard to understand any believer who has the ability to improve himself but doesn't, has the money to buy better clothes but doesn't, has an iron to press his clothes but doesn't use it, has a comb to comb his hair but doesn't care how his hair looks, has the opportunity to study and increase his knowledge and skills but never cares enough to do it, has been reared in a good home with godly parental examples but allows his living quarters to look like a pig pen. It is very important for you to understand that God doesn't choose passionless people to do mighty works. He carefully observes a person's attitude and desire before he lays his hand upon him and calls him to do something historic and monumental. Attitude and desire are very important to God. In fact, Paul wrote, "This is a true saying. If a man desires the office of a bishop, he desires a good work." The word desire is the Greek word orego. This word pictures a person who wants something so badly that he stretches forward to obtain what he wants. It literally means to be outstretched or to stretch forward. The idea is of a fierce, unyielding desire to have or to be something. It refers to a person's inward attitude and determination to always do the best he can with what he is and to become the best he can be. You see, when a person has loads of talent and potential but never combs his hair, irons his clothes, makes his bed, washes his car, or cleans his pig pen of a home, it should deeply disturb us. It should especially concern us if that person has the money to improve himself but never does it because he doesn't care. As a person who never attempts to make improvements in his living condition is not someone I would want to serve alongside me in my ministry. I know from the way he lives that he isn't a person with high standards of excellence. Likewise, an individual who's content to remain at his current level of proficiency at work, never striving for greater results, demonstrates a low level of desire to attain excellence. This is probably not the kind of person that God can trust to do great things for his kingdom. A person's take it easy, don't rock the boat, never achieve anything special attitude reveals a lack of passion and desire needed to be a mover and shaker in life. This person could be developing his mind. He could be striving for excellence in his work. He could be reading books and developing skills of professionalism in his chosen field. Instead, he sits around in a puddle of mediocrity, satisfied with the status quo. If you know someone who is called of God and loaded with gifts and talents, but who is lazy in his approach to life, let me encourage you to speak correction to this person in love. God will never select that person to do anything great until he becomes willing to change. Why would God trust this kind of person with an important task when he can't even make his bed or comb his hair? Regardless of the talent or gifts this person possesses, he is eliminated by his own lack of desire. This issue of desire is not a second-rate issue. It's right at the top of the list of requirements for excellence. It's so critical to advancement in life that when the Apostle Paul gave Timothy his list of character requirements for Christian leaders, the first thing he put on the list was desire. When God observes your life, does he see the kind of desire that is essential for leaders? If not, what are you going to do to change this in your life starting today? And I would say we are all called to be leaders here. We're all called to be leading someone in our lives. So how do we step up to Yahweh's level of excellence? How do we raise that bar in our own life so that we're setting the standard higher for other people? You know, there's a lot of mediocrity in the world. There shouldn't be in the church. We're called to be the ones who are setting the standard, who are setting it high, not in a judgmental way, but with our actions of saying this is how high you can shoot, and this is the best that Yahweh can give you. We should be living billboards, as Mom said, accurately representing him. So I think as we move into this season, you know, being a season of heightenedness and season of war, we really have got to step up and raise our standards higher. We've got to be living like those who are in the day. You know, like he said, the time is past for living in the night. The night's far past, the day is here. Put on the armor of light, live as sons of light, live as you know that you're supposed to live, and stop going around the same tree over and over again, trying to deal with the same things. No, just step up. Step up. It's time for us all to step up in our lives. The times require it of us. Amen. Well, thank you for those of you who watched tonight. We trust you've gotten something out of this message. We'll see you on Saturday at 11 a.m. Until then, you have a blessed week.